Hello, and we are live, and I am trying a new thing through StreamYard, which is what I use to do this, whereby I can stream horizontally and vertically. So you may be able to see me if your phone is like this, but also if it's like this. Let me know if that's working for you. Hello, thank you for joining this History News Live for November. And if you're watching on the playback, thank you for that as well. Let's hop right in with some hellos. What I'm sat in front of, is a photograph I took. So tell me if you know what I'm sat in front of, where I am on our journey today. In the meantime, let's do our hellos. Leona, hello. All well here. The kids are doing good. We're all tired. Dominic is still of the opinion that sleep is for the week, but he is now very keen on walking, but prefers to crawl and then climb. So I'm not worried about his mobility because he absolutely can walk. I caught him this morning. He'd managed to fashion a sort of ramp and he was crawling up onto the side tables in his bedroom. So we managed to catch him in time because he's has no fear. So that's what's going on in my house. Hello, Shane. I have not made any start on the Christmas shopping or the decorations because in this house, Christmas does not begin until after my husband's birthday, which is later this week. So I think we're going to head away for the weekend this weekend, and then we might start doing our Christmas decorations in the start of December. I am trying out a new thing this year. I've prepped Gabriel for it. The new thing is we are telling him that Santa has asked us for a favour and is asking all sorts of people for favours. And that is when we first set up the Christmas tree, Santa is going to leave some bags by the Christmas tree. And any toys that Gabriel is done playing with, we are going to give to Santa so that he can recycle them because Santa's all into the green recycling process. And I figure that anything that's in good enough condition, it's better to get it in early days of December because then you can take it to a charity shop. And that means that people can buy it if they want for Christmas for their kids. And hopefully somebody else can get some use out of it. So that is what we will be doing. Fingers crossed. Who knows? We'll see. Hello, Lizzie. Thank you for joining. Yes, Jessie. Happy Monday to you too. Indeed, lovely to have you here. Leona wonders if there's a video on the history of toys. Now, I have got a history on games, which sort of semi-involves toys, but they're not specifically royal toys. I haven't got a video on royal toys, or for that matter, toys in general, but I have got some books on the kind of toys that we're doing the round. So maybe I could look into making that. Thank you. That's a great idea. Hello, Steve. Thank you for joining. And Sid Archer, hello. Hi, Jennifer. Thank you for joining. Jessie wonders if I'm in a church or if it's some kind of archive. You're closer with archive. You're much closer with archive. Good evening, Stuart. Thank you for joining. Esmeralda, welcome to your first live. Thank you for joining from Michigan. It's Thanksgiving soon, this week, last week, this week. If you celebrate, I hope you have a lovely time with minimal dramas, unless, of course, you enjoy the dramas, in which case, have fun. Try and record some of them. Hello, Scarlett. Good evening to you too. I'm just looking at the... Rich Mitch needs videos on William Rufus and Henry II. I will add that to the list. Carol, Marmaduke's and Sleepy Robs. I'm assuming Marmaduke is a pet rather than a baby, although Marmaduke would be an excellent name for a child. We have had some sad news, actually. I've debated whether to talk about it because it's really upsetting for us. So not everybody in the family is well because unfortunately our lovely little chinchilla Starbuck, we noticed a couple of weeks ago, one evening, that she was letting Jamie, my husband, pick her up without a fight. That's not a good sign for a chinchilla. Well, not for our chinchilla anyway, because she was a feisty little monster. And so we booked a vet appointment for the next day, and very sadly and unfortunately, that was too late, because she passed away on the way to the vet. So we're very sad. Gabriel was especially very sad. So we've sort of been dealing with that. I feel I'm able to talk about it now. When it first happened, I was really upset, and now I'm kind of more composed about it. But yeah, it was awful. And my husband's just devastated because he loved her. We all loved her. But yeah, so that's what we've been dealing with. Esmeralda asks, is there much history on royal toys? Well, there's history on the manufacture of toys. And we also, because of things like mudlarks, we do have examples of toys that various groups of people in society would have had access to. And there are books on that kind of thing, the finds and stuff like that. Hi, Donald Duck. Thank you for making it to the live. MV, hello from Germany. Hello, hello. Thank you for all of your kind words about Starbuck. Amy, your chinchilla hates being held. Yeah, so you know they can be very pugnacious. So you know when something's wrong. And as a chinchilla owner, you also know how quickly they can go from being absolutely fine to just taking it. They give you no clues. So yeah, it was a shock. She was eating, she was drinking, she was running on her wheel, she was being a little spice goblin. Certainly the day before, Jamie was able to pick her up. So it sucks. Venomous Care Bear, she was 9, which sounds old for a rodent, but chinchillas some chinchillas, there have been recorded chinchillas that have lived to like 20 years. I think that's quite rare. But I think the average is somewhere like 10 or 11 years. But she was not bred on purpose. So her owners had an accidental breed, and that always is a bit more risky. So when we first got her, she came home with her sister, who was part of this accidental breed, and her sister was albino, which may have added some kind of health complications that we weren't completely aware of. But the stress of transporting her to our house and putting her in a cage meant that Starbuck lost her sister. So they are able to live for ages, but they're also incredibly fragile. So it's really, yeah, it sucks. But yes, so we're working hard to sort of cheer Gabriel up, and I think we will. We won't be getting more chinchillas, but I don't think we'll be a petless home for long. It's not going to be an immediate thing, but maybe in the new year we'll be hoping to get a pet. For a number of reasons. We want our kids to grow up with a pet. We like having a pet, and I think it gives the boys a good understanding of being gentle and kind and all those kind of things that you want your kids to be. And also it's nice to have another member of the family. Venomous Care Bear says 10 is pretty good, 6 is the average. Oh, I didn't know 6 was the average. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, she was 9. Shane, it's so hot. It's a parrot or a macaw. I think, I'll be honest with you, I think we're done with exotics for a little bit. it may be something that we come back to. I don't necessarily think it would be fair to have a macaw around a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old. I think we're probably going to go slightly less random in our pet choice, and we're probably going to go, we're almost certainly going to go dog. So I think we're going to Leona can't have a parrot due to language on history after dark. That is absolutely an excellent point as well. Yeah, that's that we've got to avoid that. Shane, so hard to explain lost to a kid. So yeah, he, even though he's 5, he understood immediately. And what was weird is we decided that the best thing to do when Starbuck lost her sister was to get her to pair bond her, to try and pair bond her, which in itself was difficult because they can, if they don't like each other, they can fight to the death very quickly. So we went through the process of having 2 separate cages, gradually allowing them to have playtime. It took weeks and weeks and weeks. And we had this other chinchilla, and she ended up, it was about 2 years before Starbuck passed away. She had a heart problem that we again didn't know about. She was lethargic in the cage, took her to the vet. The vet went, there's something seriously wrong with her heart. And she said the kind of thing would be to put her to sleep. So I didn't think Gabriel remembered Athena. We went through a Battlestar Galactica naming thing, so hence 6, Athena, Starbuck. But when we told him, he connected the two, and his first phrase was, first Athena, now Starbuck, so now I have no pets. And I was like, and of course, as a mother, your heart just explodes into a million billion pieces. And I'll be honest, we got home and I was immediately like trawling through rescue charities. Like, I need to bring an animal into this house immediately because I need to fix it. But yes, fortunately, my husband talked me off of that particular ridiculous ledge because otherwise I think I would have been out the next day being like, let me bring something fluffy home. That will fix everything. It would not. That would have been stupid. But I did just want to try and fix it. So yes. Edinburgh scared, but I could get a Chihuahua if you want the same fairy demon vibe. I mean, that is a great it's a great point. I could. They're probably about the same size. I've seen some Chihuahuas and Pomeranians where walking around near where we live, and my husband's gone, that is the size of our chinchilla. Dear. So let's hop in though, because we do have many, as per usual, we have many things to cover. We have got some updates, some repatriation news, we've got new news, we've got some ding dongs, and we've got some events and exhibitions. As per usual, the articles will be listed in the description box and numbered. Those numbers will correspond with the number you will see on the bottom of the screen. Thank you so much to everybody who has sent me articles. And we also, I haven't seen many articles coming in just yet, but do keep them coming. Now then, have we got any guesses? Last call for guesses. I've seen people say library. Yes, correct. I think I saw Oxford mentioned. I want a specific as to where I am. Various things have been filmed here. It has been used as a film location. Final call for what I am sat in front of. Any more before I start hopping into the thank yous, etc. Maybe Doctor Who was filmed there. Wouldn't surprise me. Not Pitt Rivers. Not too far. It is an archives, Esmeralda. Okay, I'm gonna put you out of your misery. This is Duke Humphrey's library, which is part of the Libraries of Oxford. So I think I was there because I was up visiting an exhibition at the Bodleian, and I got to go on a tour around it. So there we go. That Duke Humphrey's library. Pretty cool, hey? And I don't know if you can see this bit where it's all like boxed off. That is because I think it was Charles I, possibly Charles II, one of the Charleses, not Charles III, when he was studying as king and he was having books, he tried to take books out of the library, but you're not supposed to take books out of the library. You have to sign an oath that you won't. And so what they did was they created a grated sort of private reading bay for him. And so that's why that is there. The ceiling panels, they all have the motto of Oxford or the Bodleian. Not sure. But it's beautiful, isn't it? It's really cool. Steve, yes, it was you. You connected to the Bodleian visit. You were absolutely right. It was. I did take this from the Bodleian visit. It's a good time. There we go. So let us, without further ado, hop in to the thank yous. I have to thank Elverta, Jessie, Yvonne, Joseph, Kelly, Leona, Beth, Katie, Shane, Kate, Snudpuckle, Alicia, Kathy, Mackenzie, Emelia and Beccy. Thank you so much for sending me in those news items. It always means so much that you think of me when you see these history news pieces. Let us hop in to the first of our updates, shall we? Okay, so as we know, after much ado and more awaiting, the Grand Egyptian Museum is indeed open. However, apparently the ticketing policy is causing chaos with claims of discrimination. This museum has been in process of being constructed for some 2 decades. It opened earlier in November. It had this star-studded ceremony, basically. However, there's apparently a problem with crowd control. So 4th of November, images pop up on social media with thousands of people spilling out onto the Giza Plateau, having been denied entry. The museum chief executive had to put out a statement on the Friday saying that more than 27,000 tickets had been sold, which was beyond the limit of 20,000. So there's some sort of problems with the ticketing system. Tickets can be booked online and in physical kiosks. So this apparently is what caused the over-issuing of tickets. There's going to be a switch to an online booking system from December, I believe. Then a week later, the museum is being criticised by Egyptians who had been apparently unable to secure tickets for the Sunday and the Monday. There were claims going around that the museum had reserved a high share of tickets for foreigners, so that meant that locals couldn't go. It was alleged there was an 80-20 split, so 80 tourists for 20 locals. There was a claim that the museum was developing a strategy to ensure a set percentage of tickets went to foreign tourists as a way of easing crowd control issues. The museum recorded 15,200 visitors on a Friday. Apparently 56% of them were Egyptian, and this was cited as evidence that there was in fact not discrimination and people were not being excluded, but apparently not everyone has been convinced by this claim. One of the members of parliament, a social democratic member of parliament, who is also a critic of government policy, put an official request in to abolish ticket quota, saying, quote, "How could any citizen of this land find no place at the same time that a foreigner may enter freely?" He pointed out there was no comparable ticketing system in any museum in the world. That's absolutely true, it's to my knowledge. Pointing out the heritage of our homeland is not a commodity. The right of Egyptians in their own land is not up for negotiation. I have to say, obviously, not my museum, not my heritage, but I think that's very uncommon. I can't think of anything like that where a museum puts a ratio based upon where people come from. I mean, sometimes for local residents, there'll be cheaper tickets for some things. I mean, the one that springs to mind is the Brighton Pavilion, if you are a Brighton and Hove council taxpayer, because you technically pay for and thus part share in the pavilion. If you have a Brighton Hove council tax letter to prove you live there, you get a discounted ticket. Fair enough. But I don't believe there's anywhere else in the world that locals are, by quota, blocked from entering and it's given preference to foreign visitors. I think that if there ever were to be a quota, it would likely potentially be the other way around. So we shall see. Jessie, I can see wanting to have tourists to get more publicity, but the locals absolutely should not be limited so they can view their own heritage. I mean, yes, I agree. I think that may be a way to, particularly in the early days of the opening, and I understand that Egypt is very keen to capitalize and profit from tourism money, and that makes total sense. But one way to do it, particularly in the early days, is you have these tickets open for allocation, but if foreign visitors who are coming there with their tourist money want to put that money where their mouth is, maybe you open the museum up in the evenings for the first 6 months of opening for an inflated fee. And maybe that could be only open to foreign visitors. Maybe it has to be booked through tour operators or something like that. And it should be incredibly expensive to do, I think. But even then, maybe people would want to come in after hours, particularly if there's some event going on, to see their heritage by moonlight, if you wish. Further update. Mary-Ann Rose says, I subscribe to the first come, first serve theory. Yeah, valid. Leona, have a tier price for all, and no matter where you're from. Yeah, maybe. Mariska says, could it be influenced by colonialism? Not trying to be that person, but recently an influence on post-colonial colonialism, so it's fresh in my mind. I mean, I think that in essence, yes, because even if the government policy is based upon trying to do their best to claw tourism money out of visitors from nations that hadn't had their hand in the colonial effort, that is in itself a post-colonial situation, because that money exists and that disparity potentially exists because of the legacy of colonialism. So it absolutely relates to the colonial project, because that's where the disparity of wealth arguably rests itself. That's the point, yes. Reem points out the V&A does a reserve on tickets, but if members and non-members, other museums do this too. Yeah, so members absolutely will be first come, first served. So obviously with certain exhibitions, members will get in for free, but they may be asked, if it's going to be a popular museum, they may be asked to pre-book a free membership ticket. Usually it will be a first come, first served affair, but members might get informed first. Of course, the RSC does something whereby tickets go on sale to members of the RSC first. Yeah. And why not? They are paying to keep the lights on. So the Louvre heist. Apparently, the suspect is a social media star and a former museum guard. One of the men arrested on suspicion of stealing 88 million euros worth of crown jewels from the Louvre is a minor. Oh, that word's going to be heavy on that person's heart. A minor social media star with a passion for motorbikes, who has worked as a security guard at the Pompeii Centre. He's been identified as Abdoulaye N. I'm assuming his surname begins with N. He's 39 and he faces charges of organised theft, and criminal conspiracy. There are 4 suspects who are in custody in relation to this theft, including 3 who are thought to be members of this 4-man gang. 2 of the gang smashed an unsecured window and 2 glass display cases before descending in the lift and fleeing on motorbikes that were driven by the other 2. This was a brazen daylight heist. They fled with 8 pieces, one of which is an emerald and diamond necklace that Napoleon gave to his second wife, Marie Louise. There was also a diadem set with 212 pearls and nearly 2,000 diamonds that belonged to the wife of Napoleon III. Apparently, the suspect that they're talking about was known on social media as Dudu Cross Bitoum. I don't know what that means, but is a well-known neighborhood figure who released numerous videos on YouTube and more recently TikTok and Instagram. Some videos with the slogan, which translates to "always close to the tarmac." Oh, okay. Show him performing tricks on motorbikes in Paris and Aubervilliers, which is near the Stade de France sports stadium. There's also other videos offering muscle building tips. So, didn't all his muscle building and his motorbiking didn't prevent him from being caught. So I'm assuming there's going to be some court happening soon, no doubt. And as we get updates, I shall investigate. My husband's just texted saying that the Louvre heist wasn't him. Well, that he would say that, wouldn't he? He would say that. Steve says, oh, an inside job. Yes, we're hearing a lot of that, aren't we? We are hearing a lot of these thefts do seem... The British Museum was allegedly... I've forgotten if we had the trial for that. Has he confessed? Allegedly, an inside job. I wonder why. Mariska asks, was he posing with the motorbike used in the crime? That's an excellent question. So in several of the videos, he's riding a Yamaha T-Max, which is a powerful make of mega scooter used in the Louvre getaway. So he poses, I think, certainly with a motorbike that is the type of vehicle used in the getaway, but they don't seem to be specific that the one he poses with was in fact the one used in the getaway. I mean, if that's the case, if there's video of him on the motorbike that is known to have been used in the heist, he is not smart. That is not smart. Yeah, I mean, it's, as Jessie says, it explains something about the second floor window. It took less than 10 minutes to get in and out. That's because that part of the heist felt slick. The rest of the heist and the speed with which they were caught, not slick. So the inside job side of it, rather than the professional heisters, makes a lot of sense. My husband says, has to be an inside job. No one goes willingly to Paris. I should point out that my husband spent a number of years in France growing up. He was in his pre-teen years. He moved over to France, and he was there, and he went to a French school, and he did his baccalaureate in French, and he has a strange animus towards the city of Paris. And I've begged him that we should go because I would love to go to Paris. And he is like, I would rather go anywhere else. I'm going to convince him, because when he was living in France, he was living in, a much more rural area. Right, we have an update. Though we were talking about it last time, that there were rumours, or it was claimed that this repatriation was going to happen. It has in fact happened, and the Vatican has returned Indigenous cultural items to Canada's Catholic bishops, including a kayak, which we can see here, which was once used to hunt for beluga and other whales. And on top of that, also 61 other cultural objects from various First Nations, Métis and Inuit communities. These items have been returned to Canada. They will be returned to Canada on the 6th of December because they have already been gifted to the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops. So they're with Canadian representatives, but they will be back in Canada on the 6th of December. This is the conclusion of a journey that was initiated by Pope Francis, which included his apostolic journey to Canada in 2022, various audiences with Indigenous communities, and the publication of the Declaration on the Doctrine of Discovery in 2023. Leo XIV desires that this gift might represent a sign of dialogue, respect, and fraternity. The CCCB will proceed as soon as possible to transfer the artifacts to the national Indigenous organisations, and they can then ensure the artifacts are reunited with their communities of origin. So once that final part of the repatriation, I'm assuming that will also make it into the news. So I will also let you know when that has happened. Venomous Care Bear, your wife also hates Paris, refuses to go near it except for Disney Paris. Well, I have told his lordship that we certainly will be going to Disney Paris because I believe spring of next year, the Frozen Land opens. And as I have an Elsa lover in the house, we shall be going to see that. And I'm thinking that we could just do a quick, I don't know where places are, but we could potentially do a quick trip to, Versailles, the Louvre. I won't be stealing anything. And then from maybe also we can go to Puy de Fou. That's another place I also want to go. And I want to go and see mad chariot racing. Carol Hart says that's the day of St. Nicholas. The 6th of December? Is that St. Nicholas's day? As in St. Nicholas, Santa Claus St. Nicholas. So rather than a gift, a return of a gift. Riska asks a great question. How do we balance things like repatriation and reverence for cultures with the want to study and understand the cultures in question? So I can only speak from my viewpoint and very happy for that to be challenged, corrected. I'm of the opinion that the items in question, the appropriate reverence for them involves them being managed by the culture and community from which they originate. That in an ideal world, the study of these artifacts, of these cultural properties, sometimes of these human remains, will be done by individuals from the communities from which those people or things or artifacts originated. For that to be the case, we need to tear down the barriers to accessing not just higher education, but beyond that, postgraduate education, and also jobs within the ivory tower of the establishment. Those jobs, particularly in areas like, for example, Indigenous studies, we need to be ensuring that there is a way open for people from those communities who could then go on to study those items, that there is a way open for them to get to the position where they can do that study. That's my opinion, because I think decolonization has to go hand in hand with repatriation, and decolonization doesn't just happen with the item itself, with the repatriation. It doesn't just happen in the museum display, it happens in the boardroom. And for it to happen in the boardroom, it has to also happen in the university, in the classrooms, in the libraries. So that's the way I view it. That's the way I view it. Jennifer says this is made news in Canada, hoping that the Pope/Vatican apologises for residential schools as well, but baby steps. Yeah, I mean, that also needs to happen. Yeah. Not Radagast says, I think it's a question of the community's origin to decide it's their cultural inheritance first. I agree with that. I think that in an ideal world, this will be part of a global conversation where all of the stakeholders have a seat at the table, but where we do away with the idea that finders keepers or possession is 9/10 of the law or any other nonsense from that position. That would be where I would sit. Miriam Rosie says that your major museum is dealing with Indigenous persons on a reserve and using the local tribes interpreters. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing, isn't it? That the kind of the process of repatriation and decolonization, it also has to fundamentally, for it to be done properly and in ways that add value to everybody concerned. It's also, we have to see it as an opportunity rather than a capitulation. I think if we frame it as a capitulation, everybody loses, my opinion. I think that the return of ownership, whether that involves, and it may not always involve the physical return of items. If, for example, a community is not set up to properly house or deal with the artifacts that rightfully belong to them, and they know and they are prepared for them to be safer in some institution, that doesn't mean that ownership can't be transferred. That doesn't mean there shouldn't be a recognition that this is kindly loaned by. That doesn't mean that the people for whom that is their cultural history should not be able to go in and fact check, proofread, make changes, give lectures on, teach curators who are displaying these items. Like, things should never be the wrong way round or described in ways that are offensive. They should not be, if they are to be repaired, there should be consultation with the community. If they are being upkept, there should be consultation with the community at every stage. And I think those are ways to do it. And also, this conversation is going to evolve because we are at the very precipice of actually having it. But if we frame it as an opportunity to learn more about these things and each other, I'm of the opinion that everyone wins, personally. Alicia, I worked for a tribe as an archaeologist. They fully manage their own cultural history, and it's one of the best I've ever worked on. Yeah. Viewing the return of these items as an incredible opportunity for everybody to learn more about them, I think is the way to go. So I've put this in updates because it does affect history. And obviously it relates to historical injustice, but this is also an act very much of the present, and it is an act of politics that will affect later history. So I'm including this, but I'm framing it very clearly in that way because this becomes so far out of my area of expertise. This is diplomacy, this is negotiation, this is backroom deals that is so far out of my wheelhouse. But Australia's first treaty with its Indigenous people is going to be signed in Victoria this month. And it will give First Nations people more say on the laws and the policies affecting them. And there's an NPR listen, like a kind of interview on it. So we have things talking about how this reckons with the wrongs of the past and sets a course guided by truth for a better future. It's one that's expected to act on the nearly 150 recommendations of a year-long special inquiry into the impacts of colonialism on Aboriginal Australians. Evidence from the truth-telling process will be used in history education in schools. The treaty also calls for a formal apology to First Nations in the state parliament and more use of traditional names, including for parks and waterways. Reuben Berg says that past treaty negotiations with Indigenous communities in North America were at the front of mind throughout. So, very interested to know how this is going to alter the history curriculum. If you are based in Australia, if you have maybe a young person whose history curriculum will be altered by that, please do get in touch. I don't know how much I talked about this when it happened. It was some years ago now, but actually possibly, yeah, it would have been before the, can I say it? Before the illness of 2020. I don't know if you can say it or not. I went to the Museums Association conference with my lovely friend. I did film a video on it. She runs a company called History Speak, and she put together for the Museums Association conference. She was raised and educated in India, and then she did her university over here. And what she did was she put the text from two textbooks, both aimed at the same age group, I think roughly GCSE age, one that she would have had when she was at school, and one that's a more recent textbook that's being used for a kind of new course in this country for GCSE. And she put side by side the text surrounding the Indian independence movement. And she asked people out of context to determine which country that particular history teaching came from. And 9 times out of 10, people got it wrong. But what was really interesting is the way that it reframed their own understanding of how they had been taught history. And there were people that got really emotional actually about it, because that year, the conference was in Belfast. And so there were a lot of people there who went through their schooling, and they were of an age, I'm not going to date them too terribly, but they were of an age where their schooling was against the backdrop of the Troubles and sometimes afterwards. But they were sort of talking about how if you were Catholic, you got Irish history, but if you were Protestant, you got English history. And that fact in and of itself made people tearful. And so I think it is so fascinating the way in which the things like this might change the history and the way it's taught. And I'd be very interested to do a site. So if you've got a current textbook, keep it. Which is a really weird request. If you've got a current textbook that deals with the history of Aboriginal people in Australia, First Nations people, please keep it. And then when the new curriculum that's affected by this treaty comes out, I would love to see some screenshots of a side-by-side comparison, just to see the way that a treaty or a legal change can alter potentially the way education is done. We also have this two stoneware vessels by the 19th century potter David Drake, who created thousands of poignant ceramic works inscribed lines of poetry while he was enslaved in South Carolina, have been restituted to his known descendants. These items were held in the Museum of Fine Arts, the MFA in Boston. It had been held there since 1997. They returned one of the jars to the Drake family and purchased the other back from them. Both vessels date from 1857 and were likely sold to profit Drake's enslaver, the artist, of course, receiving no compensation for his work. Drake's descendant established the Drake the Potter Legacy Trust to reclaim his legacy and, quote, ensure that his dignity and memory are honoured through the meaningful restitution and compensation, including by representing the interests of other descendants who may come forward. So some good news there. Keeping on, we've got another repatriation. The Netherlands are returning stolen ancient sculpture. That was really hard to say. A stolen ancient sculpture, Chewy, to Egypt. This is a 3,500-year-old sculpture, and it's thought highly likely, that's a quotation, that this head, dated from the time of the pharaohs, was plundered relatively recently during the Arab Spring, either in 2011 or 2012. It turned up a decade later at an arts and antiques fair in Maastricht. There was a tip-off. Dutch authorities determined it had been stolen and illegally exported. It's a sculpture, they believe, of a high-ranking official from the dynasty of Pharaoh Thutmose III. It had been offered for sale at the European Fine Art Foundation Fair in 2020. The dealer relinquished the sculpture when authorities were tipped off about its illegal origin. This news comes, of course, as the celebration of the Grand Egyptian Museum has happened. And Egyptologists are hoping that this museum will strengthen demands for key antiquities to be returned to Egypt, including the Rosetta Stone, which, as we know, is in the British Museum. And considering currently the way they are behaving about all sorts of things, I'm not going to hold my breath, even though that is, I think, what should be happening. However, we'll just keep on at them, shall we? Mariska, I don't know what you mean by British Royal Museums. So we have museums that are funded by the government. So, for example, the British Museum is, if it's almost always, I believe, if it's the ones that are free to enter, it is government funded. So that's the British Museum, that's British Museum, Victoria and Albert Museum, Science Museum, National Portrait Gallery, National Gallery, Tate Modern, Tate Britain, etc., etc., etc. So they are government funded. So they are subject to this alleged anti-repatriation law. That's what the British Library, the other one, the British Museum has sort of rested upon, saying that they are legally prohibited from deaccessioning items to repatriate them. So that is the claim. However, of course, the government could change that law. They seem unwilling. It's also worth pointing out that the people who are on the board of the British Museum, there's a lot of very politically connected people, including ex-MPs, involved there. So Riska says most articles here refer to them as royal museums. I'm not 100% sure what that would be. That probably is one of the government funded museums. I wouldn't call them royal museums, even though many of them may have been built on the orders of a royal. They aren't simply just British Museum. We have a British Museum, the British Museum, and then there are museums that happen to be in Britain. It's somewhat confusing because the British Museum it's not in any way majoritively British things either. Like there's some British stuff in there, but there's a lot of not British stuff there too. It's more So I suppose it would be. Oh, Jessie points out that you would consider Buckingham Palace as a royal museum. Yeah, okay. So as a museum that is a castle, I don't know of any repatriations that have come back from there. The items that are held in there, if they are royal palaces, many of them may be either the private collection of the monarch or their family, or it's part of the royal collection, which sounds like it belongs to the monarch, which it kind of does, but also doesn't. And those are. The royal collection is majoritively artwork, paintings, etc., sculpture, tapestries, So no doubt there are things of questionable origin. But I have not come across them repatriating. The ones that we've heard about repatriating in this country tend to be tied to universities. The Horniman was very quick to start repatriation process as well. Pitt Rivers is tied to Oxford. They've been very keen on this sort of issue. So yes, it's a lot of university and sort of archive museums that have been involved. I hope that's helpful. I fear I may have made things more confusing. Because then, of course, we've got historic royal palaces, which makes it sound like that belongs to the monarch, and it certainly doesn't. That's a charity. Okay, so let us hop on to our next repatriation. A famed Florentine diamond has turned up in Canada. We've just been talking about Canada. I don't know if this, maybe it was in one of the Canadian Royal Museums. So this has been disappeared for a century. During the Battle of Britain, the UK government needed secret location to store a whole bunch of gold, so it turned to Canada, shipped it across the Atlantic, and put it in a hastily constructed vault in Montreal, known as Operation Fish. The lesson, we're told, is Canada and its banks can keep secrets. It should come as a surprise that a famed diamond, once feared lost to history, has turned up inside a Canadian bank vault. It's a 137 carat pear-shaped stone that glimmers with a fine citron yellow hue, and apparently it adorned European royalty for centuries, but it disappeared at the end of the Second World War. It was thought it had been stolen, cut up, hidden away. Turns out, no, it was a closely held family secret. After the First World War, the Austro-Hungarian Emperor Charles I had prized jewels moved to Switzerland for safekeeping, worried about the Bolsheviks and anarchist uprising. His family later fled to Switzerland and to exile. They were uprooted again in the 1940s when the Nazis moved across Europe, and his wife, Empress Zita, fled the continent with her 8 children. Apparently, they didn't know what was causing that. They not enough TV on. And they arrived in the United States with jewels in a cardboard suitcase. They then went to Canada and settled in Quebec. It's thought that this suitcase then went into a bank safe, and then in that safe it stayed. Only 2 people, the Empress's sons, Robert and Rodolphe, were told where the diamond had been hidden. Before their deaths, they then passed this information on to their own sons. So essentially, this has been kind of going down the line. Briefly, the Shah of Persia, the 99-carat stone recut from a large diamond, was thought to be part of the missing Florentine. Others suggested a recut diamond off for sale in Geneva in 1981 could be the Florentine. But the stone unearthed in Canada is most certainly the genuine historical Florentine diamond. The family said it's going to display the diamond at a Canadian museum in coming years, adding that it won't be up for sale and they won't disclose how much it might be worth. Oh, Reen. Slightly unrelated, but people come to the V&A and ask for all the royal items, but disappointed to find its Museum of Art and Design. Look, that reminds me, in my misspent youth, I worked front of house at the Natural History Museum, and I cannot tell you the amount of times people would come up to the desk and ask me where we kept the mummies. And I went, at first I was like, with the daddies, but I didn't say that because I was trying to keep the job. But I said we didn't have mummies, and I was told frequently that they did in fact have mummies. I'm like, well, I tell you what, you go and find the mummies, and then you tell me on the map where they are, because I promise you, you're looking for the British Museum because they aren't here. I mean, there are technically, but they're in the basement. They aren't on display. So we do get that. Although my favourite story that I ever had, I may have told this before, it's cute and sad and delightful all at once. a gentleman came up to the desk and he asked me where we kept and he said this word that I had never in all of my God-given days heard of. And I said to him, could you spell that out for me? Because I didn't know everything, obviously. And so I did what we always do. I Googled it. And when I Googled it, I realized with dawning horror what this man wanted me to point him in the direction of, because what I saw on Google Images were people engaged in archaeological digs, and they were working on what looked to be human remains. However, these human remains were clearly about 40 feet tall. And at that point, I realized this man was asking me where we kept the giants because he'd seen pictures of them online. And I said, oh, okay. And I'm racking my brains as to how I need to express what I need to express. And I'm like, you know what? Be a grown up, rip the band-aid off. I went, I see this. I'm sorry. I think you've seen photographs that were digitally altered. I think they've been photoshopped because these aren't real. And bless him, he goes, oh, yeah, I was worried that might be the case. But I thought it best to come in to check. And do you know what I did not have the heart to ask him was how far he travelled, because at that point, I wanted to unzip my skin and climb out. And I most certainly did not want to know that he'd come from, I don't know, Doncaster or something. Yeah, it was really sad. But he was nice about it. I didn't get sworn at, which was, not uncommon. That did happen also. This is a big article. I'm not going to obviously read all of it out to you, but the remains and stories of Native American students are being reclaimed from a Pennsylvania cemetery. This is the latest round of exhumations of Native American students from a cemetery at the former Carlisle Indian Industrial School in Pennsylvania. It's resulted in the remains of 17 students being repatriated to their families and tribes. These are the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes of Oklahoma and the Seminole Nation of Oklahoma as well. The Carlisle School had not held its first class when Matavito Horse and Leo Road Traveller were taken there in 1879. Drafted into the US government's campaign to erase Native American tribes by wiping out their children's identities. A few years later, Matavito, a Cheyenne boy, and Leah, an Arapaho girl, were dead. So this is about reclaiming these human beings and burying them in the appropriate way, according to the ceremonies of their community and their tribe. As they point out, these original burials were without consent. There was no Native American burial. These kids are kidnapped, dumped in a grave after they die at the government's hands, and then moved so they can pave over the graves, said the 4th US Circuit Court of Appeals Judge Pamela Harris. Do you think Congress's point was like, we really need to preserve that setup? Well, no, they don't. And good thing that has been sorted out. More to come, I hope. I will keep you updated. Do, of course, read the full article because it's very dense and there's a lot of stuff in there that's worth checking out. This might have been something that needed to go in the updates. I think we may have started talking about this, but the numbers are different. So I'm putting it in repatriation, but we may have started talking about this last week. Sorry, in the last episode. Egypt has said that 36 stolen historic artifacts have been handed over by US authorities. These artifacts were handed over by the American authorities to the Egyptian embassy in the US, and they arrived in Egypt at the end of, in the last sort of week or so of October. 3 main sets of artifacts were recovered. So we've got 11 items given by the New York State Attorney General's office. One of them is a mummy burial mask which belonged to a young man during the Roman period. There's a vessel in the shape of the god Bess or Bez, a limestone funerary stele, an inscribed tablet, also from the Roman period. So we heard about in May, the Manhattan District Attorney Office saying that it had returned 11 antiquities. There was another group handed over by the Metropolitan Museum. That's 24 rare manuscripts. So this is what I think. I think we have covered all of these repatriations, but now Egypt is detailing the fact that, in fact, it was 36 items. The third group consisted of a coloured plaster panel from the 18th dynasty, about 3,000 years ago. And so I think we have covered all of these repatriations as separate things. They are grouping them together as a sort of tally list of everything that's been achieved so far. And I would not be at all surprised if we hear that more stuff will be going back as well. So our last repatriation brings it closer to my home, and that is the Stone of Destiny. The Stone of Destiny, referred to as the most beloved UK medieval rock, but it is also said that it has not survived entirely unscathed. Also known as the Stone of Scone, or Scone, depending on where you're from. It's a sandstone slab that was brought to England and put in the coronation chair. The Scots had used it in their coronations before it was stolen by the English. They're using the word Brits. That's erroneous and inaccurate. So the English stole it and brought the stone down, in the logic that without the stone they couldn't crown a king. There are, though, claims that the stone is not complete, that there are fragments that exist elsewhere. Geologists have collected their own fragments to study. The Geographical Society, the British Geographical Society, has had at different periods, crumbs from the stone. And there was also a suffragette bombing in 1914 that chipped the stone further. In 1950, the stone was stolen from Britain by Scottish students and it was dropped, I imagine because it's pretty bloody heavy. And there was a repair that then caused additional fragmentation. There are 34 small pieces that link to a 1951 repair. There has been a business of trying to track down these various fragments. In 2024, a piece turned up at the SNP headquarters. The SNP co-founder, John McCormack, who funded the 1950 Scottish theft, gave a piece to his son Neil, who then gave it to Alex Salmond, who was the leader of the party for some time. Another fragment was given to an Australian who visited Scotland, who spoke to him about the stone. Her family then gave the artefact to the Queensland Museum. A fragment also became integrated in the Diamond Jubilee stagecoach, which was made by an Australian coachmaker, and it has transported the monarchs of Britain in 2023. A Canadian journalist got another bit of it, and the students involved in the 1950s theft also kept pieces for themselves. Kay Matheson put one in a locket, while Ian Hamilton put on a silver brooch for his wife. There has been a call to form a composite biographical approach to the stone, its fragments, and its replicas, to understand the meanings and significance of them. So there are bits and pieces flying everywhere. And there is this research is really sort of showing things as they are. I think it's very interesting. I'm just seeing. So what's the difference between calling them Brits versus the English? Right. So while in many ways, I suppose pre-Normans, you might be able to talk about a Briton, maybe but it's, of course, it's a Britain made up of various nations. We don't have a United Kingdom of Great Britain until after the Act of Union in the reign of Queen Anne. There is a very distinct difference because arguably we are all British, unless you're Northern Irish, but we are all British. But so to say the British took the stone from Scotland doesn't make sense. The English took the stone from Scotland. Because that would be like, then you could equally say, potentially, that in 1950, the British people stole the stone of Scone and took it back. Well, no, Scottish people stole it from England because it's that becomes regional. Britain, as a whole landmass, my understanding of it, is different to that. Yeah, the stone was stolen from England by Scottish students, or I would say repatriated from England by Scottish students. Is it like Americans versus the state you're from? I have no idea. I think it's possibly more like if somebody says, oh, they're from America, then somebody from South America might go, which part of America? So I think it would, correct me if I'm wrong, because obviously I'm not from the continent of North or South America, but I think it would be like somebody specifying that Canada is in North America, but they aren't American, but they are on America. They're on North America, but they're not from the United States of America. Is that a way of sort of saying? I think it's more like that than state by state, because somebody might say that a Canadian comes from North America, but they're not American. I could have got that wildly wrong, and that could be wildly insensitive. I apologize if I've got that, if I've completely misunderstood, but that's what I think it's like. Oh, venomous Care Bear. Yes, I have to say I'm from the US, the United States. I can't just say I'm an American when I meet people here in Chile. And I think also, I think that sometimes when I hear Americans talking about coming here, they say I was in Europe, and they talk about being in Europe and trying the food, and we sort of go, well, where in Europe? Because that is wildly diverse. I mean, frankly, you come to England and say, oh, I visited England. Which bit? Because the scran you're going to get in London versus Dorset versus Liverpool, we are wildly culturally different in so many ways. Okay, so we're on to the new news now, friends. Let's go. Let's do this. Roman tablets have been discovered in ancient walls. This was made this scroll is made in France, known as Isano Durham during the Roman period. It occupied a strategic position along trade routes that connected modern-day Lyon to the Alpine passes and northern Italy. In studies previously, they found public and domestic buildings, workshop areas, a large temple, and a bathing complex. But now this latest excavation, they have gone through several ancient wells, and they've got a collection of wooden artifacts, including writing tablets. And the waterlogged conditions have been spectacular. Wells, not walls. I think I misspoke and said walls. Wells. So these are the things that you put the wax in, and then you write it with a stylus. They also found combs, spindle whorls. I'm not quite sure what those are, unless they are for spinning flax, yarn, wool, fabric, cloth. I'm just saying words now. Small boxes known as pyxes, and the wooden sole of scolpone type shoes. These are shoes, wooden soled shoes to which a piece of leather is attached. I suppose sort of like a flip-flop, but a bit different. What's interesting is that it would correspond to a current size 27 left foot. So a child of around 4 to 5 years old. So that's absolutely amazing. What great finds. And hopefully we'll hear about more stuff coming out of it. Meanwhile, leaving France for a Roman fort in Britain. This one referring to northern England. But of course, when you talk about Roman Britain, that is of itself a distinct landmass, arguably up to Hadrian's Wall. At some point during the Roman Empire, a man was stationed at a fort in northern England, and he had a signet ring with a blood red gemstone which had a scene from Roman mythology. We've got on this, I'll be honest with you, I have looked at it various different ways, and I can't quite see what they're talking about, but I will believe them. 2 Cupid figures picking grapes with a goat-like creature standing nearby, and he would have used this as his personal stamp mark to seal his letters. This is at a place called Bremenium, thought to have been built late in the 1st century CE, an important military outpost even after the completion of Hadrian's Wall. This burgundy intaglio has a unique design that was uncommon for Roman artifacts. It more closely resembles items that were found in Croatia and northern Italy, which possibly suggests that whoever's wearing it has come from somewhere in the Mediterranean. We can see they've also found oil lamps as well, a votive oil lamp that would be used on an altar. These round of excavations have been underway since 2021, but the site has been under investigation more broadly since the mid-19th century. This is being done to inform the conservation work inside the national park, but also to help them understand how people in the past lived based upon the remains they've left behind. There are annual excavations which offer a chance for members of the public to get involved. There were 44 adult volunteers this year, 3 younger participants, and 24 archaeology students from Newcastle University. One volunteer, Barry Mead, who's volunteered for the past 5 years, said the best part of the experience is being the, quote, first person to see any of the items dug up in 1800 years. I do love a bit of volunteer archaeology. I think it's fabulous. Love it. Is this near Brimham Rocks? I don't have one jot of a clue. I've never heard of that place, and also my geography is diabolical anyway. So if anybody knows if those things are connected, do pop it in the chat, because I could not even tell you. I'm terribly sorry. We've also found out some stuff about Pompeii. Turns out it's thought that the elite might have put towers on the top of their villas, and we have a reproduction here as to what they might have looked like. In the ruins of Pompeii, there is a villa known as the House of Thyessus, and excavations there this year have found that there were frescoes adorning the walls. Now they're trying to find out more of the secrets of this house, and they've reconstructed it digitally, this tower that might have once been attached to the structure, which probably offered sweeping views of the city and the Bay of Naples. They were intrigued by a monumental staircase they found, which led to nowhere. When Vesuvius erupted in 79 CE, hot ash, volcanic clouds of hot ash, just fall all over Pompeii. It buries the city and the people under debris. It preserves many of the building's lower levels, but the upper floors were part of the lost Pompeii. These they've put together the data to form a 3D digital model. They look at the ruined buildings and they built digital twins of the structures. Then they found features like staircases, ceilings, holes in walls that would have supported floor beams. Then they reinserted these missing beams and digitally tested their integrity. They then reconstructed what the villas might have looked like with their upper floors attached. Inside, a wooden staircase leads to an upper level, which has an elite dining room filled with windows. Lavish meals might have been prepared on the lower level. The reconstruction matches frescoes found elsewhere in Pompeii, where there are multi-story buildings with balconies and towers. Pliny the Younger wrote of 2 towers in his villa, which suggests they were an important part of a comfortable residence. These would likely have been symbols of wealth and influence. It's thought that the House of Thyessus might have been owned by a first-century politician. So this is a place where it sounds to me like it's almost this kind of elite dining room, in the way that nobles over here would start to build their special banqueting houses with a great view of their parkland, for example. It's something very similar is happening here, and how beautiful and fascinating. So, very good. We've also got this. So when a young woman buried in China's Tarim Basin about 2,000 years ago, she was dressed in these clothes. She was wrapped in a felt blanket, buried in a coffin fashioned from a tree trunk, and she had 3 outfits made using starkly contrasting styles. There's a team led by archaeologist Michael Wagner of the German Archaeological Institute and scholars from the Xinjiang Academy of Cultural Heritage, and they are investigating these garments that were excavated some 30 years ago. They radiocarbon dated the pieces to between AD 60 and 130, and then they made faithful copies. The garments include an ensemble made in the style of the Parthian people of Iran, so a silk tunic with a wool collar, wool shoes, and wool trousers. It's got a silk robe with it, which is reminiscent of Chinese gowns. They point out that every piece of the outfit surprised and impressed them. They point out that these items would have been considered haute couture at the time, and they're out of place in the woman's humble burial. It's thought, therefore, that she must have been a prominent social figure. But the felt blanket and tree trunk coffin are normal burial practices for people who are on the steppe environments and were shepherds. Her blouse and skirt combine local style with cosmopolitan Chinese fashion. It's thought that this young woman might have been adept at moving between cultures. And so you've got the slideshow of what she would have how it once would have looked. And they are incredible. And I tell you what, those trousers, and to be honest, they look like a great outfit that I'd want to wear. How fabulous is that? I love reconstruction. I particularly love it when we have fabric reconstruction. I think it's incredible. James Byers Music, it's a fantastic find. It absolutely is a fantastic find. And I love the work they've done reconstructing it. And I agree, Julesy, they do look modern. Like, looking at the pictures, the slideshow pictures, if you put those on the right kind of background, that could be, a Zara photo shoot, or maybe, I tell you, actually, scratch that, monsoon. So those outfits, that fabric choice feels monsoon to me. That shop's everywhere, isn't it? Or is that a very specific Brit reference? Other shops are available. I mean, maybe like Anthropology. At Anthropology, that's who'd sell that, I reckon. Particularly the kind of kimono style of thing. That would cost you about 800 quid in Anthropology, and it'd be next to a candle that they charge £400 for. There's a rare gold pendant that apparently dates to a mysterious moment. This mysterious moment was in the 8th century. This is a 15mm diameter Anglo-Saxon disc. Oh, I should probably classify that, Mary Ann Rosie. It is not. I'm not referring to it is the same spelling, but there is a shop over here, and they have a sister shop which sells earrings and purses and things called Accessorize. And Monsoon, a lot of silk, a lot of heavy embroidery. I feel the aim is boho. Expensive, not anthropology expensive, but expensive. So this Anglo-Saxon disc was found in Swathingham, which is in Norfolk. Historian Helen Geek, she's part of the Portable Antiquity scheme, said it was a really rare find. And it's got designs that are similar to those that are found on coins at the time. But this, though, is a pendant. It's thought to be early 8th century because it doesn't really fit with anything else. The odd things is that people are still wearing things like the pendant, but they don't lose them much. So the knowledge they have is from graves, essentially, when they find things like this. Much of the jewellery that's seen as typically Anglo-Saxon dates from the 6th or 7th centuries, and they are buried as grave goods. These are very high-status objects, like the ones discovered at the burial at Sutton Hoo in Suffolk, that are arguably the most famous. She points out that we know almost nothing about the jewellery of the 8th century because the way of life suddenly changes and people stop being buried with clothes and artefacts and are usually wrapped in a shroud. So it's a mysterious moment. That's what they're talking about there. The majority of the finds unearthed from the early to mid-8th century are coins and pottery, including mass-produced Ipswich ware pots and pitchers from the region. Kings don't add their names to coins until Leona becomes the ruler of East Anglia in AD 749, so they are dated by patterns instead. These are two standard objects from the period, like the Lindisfarne Gospel at the British Library and the Franks casket, which is part of the British Museum collection. They are examples of high-class art and craft. But Helen Geek thinks that the gold pendant might fill in a gap between the furnished burials of earlier centuries and the late 8th century, where there's lots of history and archaeology. We're going to find out whether they think it's treasure. If it's treasure, it likely will be, I think. It's going to be potentially offered up for a museum to purchase. First scientific evidence of the Black Death or plague has been found in Edinburgh on human remains. This plaque on a child's teeth has been found to contain pathogens for the bacteria for the bubonic plague. This was originally excavated in 1981, this skeleton, human remains, and it was from the grounds of St Giles Cathedral. The remains have been DNA sequenced, they've had isotopic analysis, and they've been radiocarbon dated. Apparently this find is very exciting. I feel, though, Susan Pilling, didn't Helen Geek work on Time Team? I believe that rings a bell. I believe so. I think, though, she may have come on to Time. I'm happy to be corrected on this. I may be misremembering. I think, though, she featured on Time Team because of her work with the Portable Antiquity scheme. So I think she came in as a representative for that. Or maybe that was towards the later series. Happy to be correct on that. I may be misremembering. So the human remains we're talking about here, they date from between 1300 and 1370, which coincides with the Black Death. And they exhumed 115 almost 45 years ago, so that they could make way for steps inside the cathedral on the Royal Mile. If you've been to the Edinburgh Fringe, you'll be very, very familiar with this particular church. The teenager has the ancient DNA of the bacteria of the Black Death, the bubonic plague, which is really exciting. I mean, I'm sure it is. But at the same time, don't tinker too much, eh? Don't wake it up. Let's keep it nice and calcified in the calculus, hey? Let's do that. So, as we know, this is one of the most fatal pandemics in history. It's thought to have wiped out about 50 million people in Europe. There were 5 layers of bodies in the cathedral's grounds, covering about 100 years. Without the DNA, they wouldn't have known how the person died. And by examining all the cemeteries in a proper scientific way, they can change the terms of how they understand and chart our history. So this picture here is a 12th century man who was among the medieval Edinburgh residents whose faces have been restored. They point out this, they have no doubt there's much more left to uncover, and the heritage and shared stories will be enhanced over time. Yes, Mariska, I believe we were well aware that the bubonic plague made its way to Scotland, but when we have determined in the past, my understanding is that for a lot of cases, when we have determined that something is a, in quotes, plague pit, we have been basing that on the quantity of remains found, the means and ways in which they are buried, so quickly in a slapdash fashion in a mass grave. It's those telltale signs that make it clear that to researchers that this is a rapid response to something terrifying. So it's plague pit. Because plague doesn't leave, well, until now, doesn't leave traces on the bone, but apparently it does leave traces in the plaque of the teeth, which potentially opens up a whole range of other things for remains we find where the cause of death is unclear. Perhaps we may find other bacteria or residuals of the kind of the DNA of germs in there that might tell us if somebody, I don't know, died of smallpox or something like that. You know, it's not like somebody dying of advanced syphilis. That leaves a mark on the bone. That's very clear. When it comes to things like the sweating sickness, the plague, smallpox, those things don't get written on the bone. If, of course, they find smallpox bacteria, that becomes, of course, a lot more dangerous. And definitely don't tinker with that. My husband is also agreeing with you, James. He said, "Is that Sam Neill in the picture?" Well, if they need to cast somebody, you've both said the same thing. An Inca building might have been designed to amplify sound and music. This is in the Peruvian town of Heautarara. There is a 15th century Inca building. It's known for its intricate architecture, like the structure seen across Machu Picchu. There are 3 stone walls and an opening. They think now they found the reason for the design, that it's the express purpose of amplifying sound and music. One of the historians at the University of California says, "We're learning that sound was incredibly important for the earliest cities dating back several thousand years BCE. Builders were incredibly sophisticated with their oral architecture, and the Incas are one part of this long, sophisticated tradition of sonic engineering. It's known as a tent house, a name that references its open-ended structure. It's the only known surviving tent house, as these constructions weren't as structurally sound as other Inca buildings. It survives for a fairly ironic reason. Spanish colonizers ordered that the Church of San Juan Bautista be built on top of this tent house in the 16th century as a means, arguably, to override Inca heritage. But it actually ended up providing it with the stability it needed to survive this long. They think that the amplified sound, by funneling it to one end, creating a natural speaker of sorts, they might have used it to project low frequency sounds like drums to announce the end of a battle. At the height of the Inca Empire, the Inca Empire was the largest empire in pre-Columbian America. By the time the Spanish colonizers arrived in the early 16th century, the empire encompassed modern-day Peru, most of Chile, swathes of Ecuador, Colombia, Bolivia, and Argentina. They point out the Inca valued the arts and viewed architecture as the most important of them all. Inca left behind a wealth of complex, visually interesting structures. And for this reason, academics have often emphasized visual art in their scholarship about the empire. So sound studies are really critical because they emphasize that there is also this other part of it, it's not just the visual. Life is also experienced through sound, that all of our senses, all of our historical ancestors' senses need to be understood so that we can think about how they lived and we can add that into the conversation. We've got some upsetting news here. A medieval tower collapsed in the heart of Rome. When news first came out, we'd heard about a person being injured and somebody else being trapped. We later got updates. Octave Strozzi, who was 66, was pulled out of the wreckage at 2300 local time, which was 12 hours after a section of the Torre dei Conti on the edge of the famous Roman Forum close to the Colosseum gave way and trapped him beneath. Apparently his heart stopped in the ambulance and he was unable to be revived when he got to hospital. He was a Romanian national, as was another worker who was among 3 others pulled from the rubble. When he was rescued, he was apparently conscious and talking, and his wife was also at the scene, but seemingly his injuries were unsurvivable. Rome's prefect, Lamberto Gianni, described it as a very complex situation. After the initial collapse, he said firefighters had to put up protection around the trapped man so that when the second collapse happened, he could be shielded. The rescue operation was long because they had to mitigate the enormous risk faced by the people who were trying to carry out the rescue. This 13th century tower was built by Pope Innocent III as a residence for his brother. It's separated from the main visitors area of the Roman Forum by the street, and it has now been taped off as a precaution by police. I think they are trying to stabilise the structure, understandably. I assume that they will maybe rebuild or perhaps just simply stabilise. But what a terrible thing to have happened. I don't think it's completely clear why this happens. There's an investigation into the incident. The collapse happened at about 11:20 in the morning. Bricks just fell out. This was part of this. What it happened during conservation work, but it's unclear what during the conservation work triggered this collapse. So as we get updates on that, but obviously an absolute tragedy for that man and his family, and just what a terrible thing to have had happen. A Paris court has blocked the auction of this, which is apparently the earliest known calculator, and it looks like a big boy. This is a calculating machine. Auction House Christie's confirmed that it will not proceed with bidding in the machine called La Piscaline. It was developed by the French mathematician Blaise Pascal in 1642. It was thought it could fetch 2 to 3 million euros. Scientists and researchers made a legal appeal to grant heritage protections to the instrument because it should be classified as a national treasure, they said. Pascal was just 19 years old when he developed the earliest version of the calculator, and there are only 9 machines like this still in existence. Its invention marks a breakthrough, a quantum leap, and it's got a very special meaning. It was included in Christie's auction of the library of the late Catalonia collector, Léon Parcé, which also featured Pascal's philosophical pieces, Pensées, and the first printed version of Pascal's wager. The French Heritage Group, Association Sites and Monuments, was listed as an applicant in the court filing, has welcomed this decision. I'm sure they have. That needs to be protected for the nation. Next up, friends, I'm going to warn you, it's bling bling time. The shiny is about to happen. Look out. Boom. Sotheby's diamond brooch, allegedly lost by Napoleon as his forces fled Waterloo. It's gone on sale, and it has gone on sale for, it sold for 3.5 million Swiss francs, which is about $4.4 million. Apparently, this can also be worn as a pendant. Good Lord. The chain, that's going to need a chain of office. That is, okay. It's got a diamond weighing over 13 carats with other smaller cut diamonds. It was estimated that it was going to go for 200,000 francs, so it's considerably outstripped that. It was found in a stash of personal belongings when Napoleon's carriages got held up on muddy roads when they were fleeing the Duke of Wellington's forces. It was part of the heirlooms of the Prussian royal house. The identity of the seller has not been identified, and the buyer is a private collector. One diamond expert said the sale took on the added allure in the wake of the much ballyhooed robbery of Napoleonic jewels from the Louvre Museum. Quote, given the recent Louvre heist and the provenance of arguably the most famous French figure in history, I'm not surprised the jewel achieved a majestic 3.5 million francs. I mean, good Lord. It's a big lad. Marianne Rosie, why would a soldier have a diamond brooch on his person? Well, technically, it wasn't on his person. It was in his carriage. Presumably, among the other treasures that he was transporting from the field of battle. Why do you take a massive diamond brooch to the field of battle? I don't know. I'm not Napoleon, but I assume it had some purpose. Maybe it was the plan for when he won, he would bedeck himself in diamonds the size of a duck egg and wander about with his hand in his jacket, like they seem to have loved doing for some reason, best known to their good selves. But yes, it's very shiny. It's very shiny, and the diamond is very big. And because of its significance, you obviously could never remake it into other jewellery. Maybe that's why their hands are all in their jacket. They've all got enormous diamond brooches the size of a doorknob that they're clinging to just above their rib cage. Maybe he was in diva mood. I don't know. Maybe he thought if he wore them like a collection of like nipple tassels, it would form some kind of rudimentary vest to see off blades and shot. I don't know. But it's unwearable. It's unwearable. Am I correct? Would anybody look at this and go? Because the thing is, if you wore this out, first of all, good God, it's a lot of money. But second of all, if you wore that out and about, no one's going to believe it's not paste. I mean, it's got so many diamonds involved that it just looks like costume jewellery. I mean, I couldn't do it myself. I mean, no one's offered, obviously. But if they did, I'd be like, you're most kind to offer me that enormous doorknob of a piece of jewellery. But I'm going to say no, thank you. I'm going to say no, thank you. Are we being smutty? Good, I enjoy it. I mean, I did say that I have said the word doorknob with extra emphasis on knob too many times. My husband made a really grown-up suggestion that perhaps the jewels are there as a ransom payment if captured or as a fortune of war. Maybe. Miriam Rose says, is it not unwearable? I mean, I think technically you could wear it like physically you would have the capacity to wear it. I think, based upon where would you wear it? Based upon the appearance, where would you wear it? Steve, if Nelson had got hold of this, you know who would have had it out of his grubby little hands the quickest? That would have been in the sweaty paw of the Prince Regent, later George IV, before you could whistle. If George IV had got hold of that, he probably would have plucked out his own eye just so he could mount it on an eye patch and be like, this is Napoleon's jewel. He's got his table. He's going to have his jewel. City's Island, Mr. Dr. Cat harshing our vibe. Look, you know what? Every now and again, he comes in with the solid logic. Usually, he's being irreverent and very silly, but that time I think he's probably got a point actually. But if that had ever got into the hands of Nelson, he would have had it for about 6.5 seconds before George's pudgy little hand was like, yoink, mine. Have I seen what he wore when he got shot? What were they? Not the jewellery. I've seen Nelson's waistcoat and stockings, which are blood-soaked, and in the National Maritime Museum. I've seen those, but not jewels. Not jewels. Oh, well, now my husband's just trolling me about my choice of an engagement ring. He said, maybe it's super bling. He wanted something demure, but then the jeweler brought out something shiny. Sound familiar? I love you. He's not wrong. I'm just going into all of the kind of background stories now. So when my husband proposed to me, before he was my husband, obviously, when he was just the man who lived in my house with me, he came back and he said, well, first I ordered fried chicken. It was very stressful. The chicken place was very confusing. It had weird stuff on the menu. So I had a bit of a tizzy about that. And then he got down on one knee and he said, well, I hope this is going to be a simpler process. Will you marry me? And my response was to issue a string of expletives. The F word came up a number of times. And then I said yes. But what he'd done was he had bought a ring and he said, we're going to go and choose the ring you want. This is a ring I'm proposing with. And I went, well, I want something very subtle, very, very demure, very mindful. And then we went to the jeweller's and I got confused because I am, turns out, a dirty little magpie. And I was like, oh no, I was very wrong about what I wanted. I want that one. And what I want you to also do is take the diamond out of the ring you propose with and put it on, add it to the engagement ring I'm going to have. So yes, I can understand it now. Do you know what, Napoleon? I take it all back. I apologise if you're listening from the afterlife. Do you know what? It happens to the best of us. Happens to the best. You know, 1 minute you're minding your own business, thinking you want a demure, subtle ring, and then the next second you're in a jewellery store in Brighton, not a Brighton basement, keep your mind clean. You're in a jewellery store in Brighton and the shiny has taken you over. You're possessed by it. It's not even your fault anymore. Riska, if it makes you feel better, it took me 15 minutes to figure out my now husband was even proposing to me. I thought it was just a present. That's adorable. That's adorable. Possibly better than you screaming at him to F off, which I did a few times. And then we had fried chicken, and I was very happy that I was engaged. So, what else we got? Let's carry on. Message in a bottle from World War I soldier has been discovered 109 years later. These were written by 2 Australian soldiers a few days into their voyage to the battlefields of France for World War One. They have been now found off Australia's coast, which makes me think, my God, the currents are wild. A family, the Brown family, found the Schweppes brand bottle, other drinks are available, just above the waterline at Warton Beach near Esperance in Western Australia. I'm saying that because I'm not sure if that's how that's pronounced. They found it on the 9th of October. They like to go beach cleaning, and so they thought it was a bit of rubbish. Then they had a look. They found cheerful letters, one in pencil, one by Private Malcolm Neville, who was 27, another by William Harley, who was 37, dated to the August 15th, 1916. Their troop ship, the HMAT A70 Ballarat, left Adelaide on August the 12th. Neville was killed in action a year later. Harley, wounded twice, but survived the war. He died in Adelaide in 1934 of cancer that his family say was caused by him being gassed by Germans in the trenches. Neville requested the bottles find and deliver his letter to his mother. Harley's mother was dead, was 1916, was happy for the finder to keep his note. Neville wrote to his mother that he was having a real good time. Food is real good so far, with the exception of one meal, which we buried at sea. The ship was, quote, heaving and rolling, but we're as happy as Larry. Neville wrote that he and his comrades were somewhere at sea. Harley wrote they were somewhere in the Blight. So that's sad, but also what an incredible thing to find. They think actually it probably spent more than a century ashore in the sand dunes, but erosion of the dunes caused by the swells along the beach in recent months might have been the thing that dislodged it. Although the paper was wet, the writing was legible. The bottle is in pristine condition. Harley's granddaughter was absolutely stunned by the find. We can't believe it. It feels like a miracle, and we very much feel like our grandfather has reached out to us from beyond the grave. Neville's great nephew, Herbie Neville, said his family had been brought together by the discovery. How cool is that? So the blight apparently refers to the Great Australian Bite. It's not blight, it's bite. The Great Australian Bite. Bicht? B-I-G-H-T. I'm saying bite, but it could be bicht. An enormous open bay that begins in the east of Adelaide and extends to Esperance on the western edge. Blight. Fine Art Museum of San Francisco has been given a gift of 1,600 works from a local collector. It includes the De Young and the Legion of Honor. The donated works are going to be stewarded by the Fine Arts Museum of San Francisco's Edinburgh Foundation for Graphic Arts. There are paintings, antiquities, decorative arts. There's a 19th century painting by Gustave Moreau, a 19th century bust by Charles Henry Joseph Cordier. Other gifts that have entered via this campaign include paintings by Canaletto, Angelica Kaufman, Georgia O'Keeffe, John Singer Sargent, Camille Pizarro, and Marie Guillemine Benoist. Many other paintings. There's also been contemporary works, Ruby Neri, Rashan Newsom, and Maria Guzman Capron. If you go to this, you can go to this link and you can see many of the other pieces that have been donated. So do check that out. A man digging a swimming pool in his garden has found gold worth $800,000. Well, that's nice. This is in France. He also informed the authorities after he made the discovery, and they allowed him to keep the gold as it did not come from an archaeological site. He found 5 gold bars and many coins buried in plastic bags. This gold had been acquired legally and then melted down some 15 or 20 years ago. The gold bars had unique numbers that could be traced, so they could determine they'd not been stolen. The treasure belongs to the person who finds it on their own property. The owner of the garden had previously died, and so they don't know how the gold ended up there. That is wild. That is wild. So it was 15 or 20 years old. Georgie, I think the pool is paid for, the pool house is paid for, the pool boy is paid for. You know, that is a lifelong career. Jeez. Oh, even with stamp with dead letter department in many post offices. There we are. Lucky he's got unnamed. There we are. With the release of the new Wicked movie, I haven't seen that. I'm trying to convince Gabriel to come and have a look at both of them. The hat from the 1939 film is going up for auction. This is the hat worn by Margaret Hamilton in The Wizard of Oz. It's going to be auctioned on the 9th of December. This is offered by Heritage Auction. Last year, they're the ones that sold a pair of the ruby slippers from the film. They sold it for 28 million. This is coming up for sale just after the release of the movie. It's a black wool hat, and it's one of several Oz items hitting the block. There's also a copy of L. Frank Baum's original book, signed and inscribed by Judy Garland, as well as autographed by other cast members. There's also Toto's actual paw print in there. How sweet. There's a right foot ruby slipper worn by Garland during rehearsals that's adorned with crimson burgundy glass bugle beads. That's up for auction too. The organza blouse worn by Garland on screen will also sell. It has the name Judy Garland handwritten on the label. The wand, one of the wands, last sold for 400,000 in 2019. The hat sold for 2.93 million in 2024. So it's thought that this memorabilia is going to go even higher in the December auction. Now, if you are in the mood to put some... Oh, that's a great shout. I can see Cynthia Arriva buying it. Do you know what I can see? I could see one of her die-hard, hardcore fans buying it for her and presenting it as a gift. So, the Getty artworks, they have updated their collection to allow pieces to be available digitally for free, and they can be downloaded. The response has already been fairly striking. 500,000 downloads this year alone. 88,000 roughly artworks are available under the Creative Commons Zero license. So this means that you could essentially print off a Monet painting. You can use the images to head your letters, whatever you choose to do. So the switch to Creative Commons Zero has driven a lot more interest. Apparently Van Gogh's Irises is one of the most popular images. If you want to get this free art, it can be found on the museum's website. If you go to the link in this description box, you can click on, there's a clickable link on the article, and then you just go in the search bar and you search either the artist names, or you might search a keyword from it, and then you can download, freely use all of this sort of thing. The Getty is dedicated to giving artwork to the public domain. It's a resource for everyone. You can do anything you want with it. This includes selling things, putting the images in movies, or using them for your own personal artwork. That's incredible. So check it out. And if anybody does produce anything artworky, send me a picture. Cheyenne, It's amazing, very cool. Hadn't heard of it. I hadn't heard of it. I saw this. I got sent this article. I think it's brilliant. I think it's brilliant. So Brian says, we do have the current First Lady who seems to really like hats with super wide brims. I mean, well, also not offset to a jaunty angle. There's a reason why, if you see the royal ladies of the United Kingdom, when they wear their hats, they're all askew to the same direction. That's so you can cheek kiss. Flat on like that, that is, don't come anywhere near me. Yes. So if you go in the description box and you go to number 25 and click on that link, that will take you to the article you're seeing on screen here. Beneath Van Gogh's irises on that page, there is a quote that says, the Getty's downloadable artworks can be found on the museum's website. If you click the word museum website, it will take you where you need to go. So I'm right. The next two articles we're going to look at are what is happening is ding dong adjacent in the way it makes me so livid that I want to climb out of my skin. But I did not feel comfortable putting either of these things in the ding dong because I feel like that downplays how concerning, serious, and offensive I think it is. So that is why they are where they are. They're in new news because honestly, maybe we need a new category. We need a new category of like you who did what now when and what on earth were you thinking? Or this is actively evil. Okay, look, do you know what? I'm just gonna jump in. All of the warnings, so angry that I feel like I need some kind of beta blocker. Right, let's go. A Dutch war cemetery added displays showing black US soldiers, then they were quietly removed. This is this is a cemetery in a village in the south of the Netherlands, and there has been the removal of 2 display panels about African American soldiers. Relative local communities, politicians, and historians have asked for a permanent memorial to African American servicemen after it emerged that displays commemorating black soldiers had been removed. The move has shocked people in the Netherlands. There are critics of the removal, including the community that cares for the graves, have demanded answers about why the black American soldiers have vanished from the displays. This Netherlands American cemetery, which is near Maastricht, has the burials of around 8,301 Americans who died liberating Europe. That includes 174 African Americans. In 2023, the American Battle Monuments Commission, which runs the site, opened a visitor centre and last year added 2 panels. One on the million African Americans enlisted but were fighting on 2 fronts, so against the Nazis in Europe and also against segregation. The display panels, we're told, represented a history we can never forget and from which we can learn, especially now that differences in the world are even more magnified. They fought for a freedom they did not have themselves. Dutch historians and politicians, as well as relatives of the soldiers, say that this change coincided with the Trump administration's targeting of diversity, equity, and equality and inclusion, or DEI, initiatives. Earlier this year, an article detailing the military career of Jackie Robinson, a baseball player widely considered an American hero, was removed from the Department of Defense website amid a purge of material considered to be DEI related. there's more back and forth. It's not the only concerning thing that's happening, but I don't have any idea how this serves anyone for the better. I don't know how any policy of this kind could possibly improve anything. All it says to me is that when all is said and done, particularly as we find ourselves in various places on Earth, teetering almost perpetually towards a conflagration of conflict that may draw all sorts of people into it. What stories like this make abundantly clear to me is that governments will ask, demand, require, enforce that their young people sign up or turn up to fight in a war they did not start, and they won't thank you for it. So remember that. This is what government gratitude looks like for the sacrifice. And this close remembrance to Armistice Day, this is what it looks like. I think it's disgusting. It makes me really angry. Another thing that when I read it, I had to read it 2 or 3 times because I am baffled. This next one, I'm again baffled as to. Oh, that was sorry, Jennifer. Your company is owned by an American parent company. You were told to remove all DEI language from our signatures and documentation. Several people refused to do it. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Because it's just wild. It's just wild. And good for them. Extra History is doing videos on recently removed history to recall what's being destroyed. Brilliant. If you can, download those videos and store them on an external hard drive. You know, we know who owns the tech. We know where a lot of the tech ownership lives. Keep copies. Keep copies. As during World War II, Japanese Americans were barred from enlisting and put into internment camps, but there are instances where they were drafted. The US does not have the shiny history of the promise they boast. I think whenever it happens, conflict, war is just always such an unspeakable waste of human potential and life, that of all of the things humanity could be doing with their infinite time and resource and creativity, the creativity that is the gift of human beings, that this is how it is squandered. No. Oh yes. So Steve sent me a picture of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier after Armistice Day, and there were hand-drawn pictures alongside the poppies. because apparently that motto, lest we forget, we're forgetful of many things. Many, many things. Jennifer asked, in a generation from now, do you think someone will be doing a post or cast about the removal of history because of the American administration of all the history they removed? I think it's almost certain, depending on how the next stages play out. I think it's almost certain. And I think that let's also be completely transparent that the Overton window has not just shifted in the United States. It's shifted here too. And that is also affecting the way the curriculum is being shaped. And I think it will probably affect it as well. It's not this, there is a concerted, well-funded attempt to deny various realities in various places and to exclude and excise people because of their difference, because of all sorts of things that make them who they are. And yes, these people are very well funded. Oh dear, yeah. Tech and bots are inflaming tensions between Cambodia and Thailand. Big tech is evil. I mean, yeah. I don't know. I think we all heard about, didn't we? We all heard about blood diamonds. And that, now you can get kind of conflict-free diamonds, whatever that might mean. But of course, now it's conflict minerals. And we don't hear quite so much about that. The fact that there are still tiny children being conscripted to hold machines of destruction. I'm not going to say the word just in case. For earth minerals that are deemed valuable. The same stuff that you can find in certain parts of territory that might be again Ukraine. The sort of things that makes, batteries for phones and electric cars and all the rest of it. So yeah. Yeah, Chile, one of the biggest producers of rare earth minerals. And that can either be very profitable, but for a vulnerable community, it can of course cost them dearly. Next up, this one is also, I couldn't put it in ding dong, but this is utterly baffling to me. There was a planned auction of Holocaust artifacts that was going to take place in Germany, and this has been pulled. However, it was planned. Let's just put that where it needs to be. There, included in the sale, were hundreds of what's referred to as Holocaust artifacts, so letters written by prisoners and other documents that identify many people by name. So there were 600 lots. Letters written by prisoners from German concentration camps to their loved ones at home. Also, Gestapo index cards and other perpetrator documents. The auction was titled The System of Terror. So, I found this baffling. Christoph Hübner, who is the executive vice president of the International Auschwitz Committee, which is a Berlin-based group of survivors, said that these documents belong to the families of the victims. They should be displayed in museums or memorial exhibitions and not degraded to mere commodities. How anybody in any auction house was so devoid of empathy is the term I want to use, to think that they could appraise for value these items, because that has to happen, right? Somebody has to put this on their desk and create an auction catalogue where they appraise and attach a numerical fiscal sum to these items. And surely anybody who was born with their empathy chip intact would go, whoa, 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 whoa. This feels virulently awful. So some of them are victim artifacts, but there's also Gestapo documents. So it's both. And so they're both being put up on the same auction underneath the title The System of Terror. That was the plan. That was the plan. And as to where the money is supposed to go, who's going to profit from it? Don't know. Don't know. And yeah, maybe we should be happy that this was cancelled, because people stepped in and went, what are you doing? Absolutely not. And they clearly went, oh yeah, that's probably a bad idea. But the fact, a few steps had to happen here. First of all, somebody who has these goods, or a group of people who have these goods, went, I'm going to put this to an auction house. I'm going to put these documents out for sale for profit. Okay, wild behavior, first and foremost. Then to find an auction house that goes, you know what, babe, great idea. Let me take all of these documents and attach a monetary value and produce an auction catalogue. And it's only when government officials and essentially pressure groups went, what are you doing? They went, oh yeah, no, this is actively evil. This is actively evil. This is indecent. Brian, I feel like they've done it with Titanic victims belonging. What? How? They've done it with the victims of belongs from the victims of the Titanic. Probably set a bad precedence. People are flogging stuff. How? Someone is responsible for that. Someone is responsible for that. Mary and Rosie, where's money go that raised my eye? Well, I mean, I think the fact that it wasn't disclosed what the plan was. Maybe other news sites did. Maybe other news sites did say what the plan was for the money, but I think it's very concerning that it was not explicitly stated in any of these articles. My husband pointed out that in the essence of the Titanic, it could be claimed as salvage. It could be. I agree with you. However, it's so deep. The Titanic is so deep that, and the way we deal with modern wreck sites, we've only been able to get down there properly fairly recently, and the ethics around it function differently. I'm not wrong, right? This is objectively disgusting. But I mean, both of these articles, but they don't belong in the ding dong section, because in so many ways it's I didn't feel comfortable putting it there. I don't know where it goes, because new news doesn't feel like it's separated enough out. I don't know. Unless I create a rage corner. You know, Kat's going to come close to popping a blood vessel in her eyeball. This is where the blood vessel popping section. But even that, that makes it sound funny. And there is nothing funny about either of those things. But I'm going to raise them, and I will keep raising them, because I think we need to keep eyes on the shenanigans. That's not even the right word. We need to keep eyes on the depravity. That's what this is. In both cases, we need to keep eyes on the depravity of people who think they can get away with it. And I don't know if this is about them believing that the war on woke has been won. I don't know. Or if cancel culture is over. I don't know. But if it's depraved, I'm going to keep talking about it, even though it makes me furious. But now we've done that, let's slide on to the ding dong. That sounds wildly inappropriate. But there we go. Oh, before we do, Brian Valker, how far along was the auction? Well, there was a listing on the website. So it went as far as a listing being created for the auction to take place, which I'm assuming means the catalogue had been created, and if it's on the website, a date for the auction had been set. Julesy, I enjoy that. Fubar. Maybe that's the new section. Maybe that's... I mean, I do also enjoy... I can't say those. I don't think I can say those. Mariska, Venomous Care Bear. Maybe Fubar is the way to go, because that's what it means. I think you're allowed to cuss. I'm not. Maybe. Who knows? In these times, the fact that this can happen, but I can't even drop a little F-bomb for fear of something happening. We're going to Fubar it. Okay. All right. I'm going to keep that in my back pocket. There we are. Thank you very much. Appreciate. On to the ding-dongs. This is a situation that happened. A teenage tourist vandalising artworks and tapestries at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. He's been named. He's 19, Joshua Vorin, who was hurling water at the French oil painting from the 19th century, the Princess de Broglie. It's described as a masterpiece. This happened at about 4:30 p.m. on the 3rd of November. He then went to a 16th century Italian altarpiece, the Madonna and Child, and splashed it with water. And then he ripped up 2 tapestries before being taken into custody shortly afterwards. He was staying at a Times Square hotel, to not give a motive for the vandalism, but it does appear that he was under the influence of an, quote, unknown substance, and was turned over to the police by his mother. He was taken to the hospital before being arraigned on criminal mischief charges. This damage was apparently minor, and the repairs are expected to cost around $1,000. Oh dear. So I'm sure we're going to find out what he's taken. I mean, it's angel dust, isn't it? It's angel dust. Yep. Turns out, if you're taking a trip to New York with your mum, maybe don't go down to the local corner and smoke whatever's given to you. because you may be in issues. He's going to regret that. That's for sure. Bad times. But unfortunately, only £1,000 worth of damage. This, though, far more damage here. Far more damage. A visitor's improper use of incense and candles in China has caused a pavilion and a sacred temple to burn down. This is a 3-story structure engulfed from top to bottom. Apparently there were no casualties, and the fire didn't spread to surrounding forest areas. The preliminary findings said that it's incense and candles used improperly. The pavilion, built in October 2009, fortunately contained no cultural relics. All the buildings in the temple complex were modern construction with no ancient architectural remains. It was commissioned in 2008, completed in 2009. The original temple dated back many centuries, but the current buildings were then built in the 1990s. Further action would be taken in line with investigation, and safety measures would be strengthened to reduce fire risks. And this, in 2023, flame broke through a centuries-old temple in China, almost burning the building to the ground. The fire was extinguished, and the Buddha statue contained within remained partially intact, but several temple structures were destroyed. So fortunately, a replica, but also a warning, I think. It's that line you have to walk, that places like this, whether reconstructions or whether they are historical from the period, using them for their intended purpose keeps them alive. It maintains them. However, equally, using them, particularly using them improperly, endangers them in the ways we're seeing here. So something to consider and think about. Next up, we're moving on to events and exhibitions, and we've got this amazing article reviewing V&A East. They're referring to it as a new museum for Gen Z. I think it's a museum for everybody. I think it's really worth checking out. So in addition to this article, which I recommend you read, you will also find links to how to visit the V&A East, and also the accessibility information. That's all linked down below. This is a place where you can get items out of storage, so it's almost like a library of artifacts as well. There's special means to go through, so do check it out. I know of some people from where I've worked, they've gone in groups, and sometimes they've had like a tour and they've gone and seen artifacts. I really want to go and check out the V&A East. I think it sounds really interesting to look at what they're doing here. So maybe I will see if they'll let me come in and talk to somebody, and maybe I can film it and look at how it functions and what you can do there for all those people that either want to plan a visit but aren't sure how, or for people who perhaps live abroad and might not make it over. So V&A East, something to check out there. Also, if you are abroad, wherever you might be, this is an online resource. We have got a digital atlas of the ancient roads of the Roman Empire. Online, there are tutorials about how to use it, and you can explore the Roman road network, which I think is super fun. And so there's a link there for you to check that out. Next up, we have got, this is in Rome, the Bible of Borso d'Esti is on display. It's on display in the Library of the Senate of the Republic, and this is part of the Vatican Festival. There's a whole list of other things that are going on, but this Bible, if you are in Italy before January the 16th, it is an absolute work of art. You can see some of the kind of artwork in it on this picture here. But also, if you click on this website, they have digitized with really high resolution some of the pages, and they are so vibrant and so stunning. So even if you can't get over to Rome to see it, then I do think check out this page, because you can see some incredible pages from this Bible there. It's just the fact that Jules says it's a trippy Bible, the level of detail and the vibrancy of the gold and the azure blues, like it's just so beautiful. It's incredible. Oh yes, this is a good point. Reed, yes, double check V&A East. Let's be very clear here. It is not the Victorian Albert Museum in South Kensington. That is a different place. Same parent institution, not the same place. Equally, there's V&A East, and there's also the Young V&A, which used to be the Museum of Childhood. This is also not in South Kensington. If you have got sproglets that you are in charge of for the day, maybe they belong to you, not on a lease basis, that you own them in some fashion. Maybe they fell out of you like mine did. If you want a afternoon of free fun with your kidlets, I suggest you check out Young V&A. It is super fun. Toys from your childhood, also activities to get involved with, all of that good stuff. Side note, take a packed lunch. The cafe is extortionate, but take a packed lunch. It's great fun. Last but by no means least, money saving was sent to me. I've been meaning to bring this up because for those who don't know, I am a freelancer at the Historic Royal Palaces. Some of the work I do there, I occasionally get to get into costume and pretend to be figures from history and talk to the public and generally mince about in beautiful clothes. Or I lead education sessions, principally for GCSE and A-level groups. So that's sort of 15 to 18-year-olds. And this is something that HRP offers for the Tower of London, Kensington and Hampton Court Palace. So it's currently London only. And then from the 9th of... is that 2024 or 2026? No, this is old. Okay, so already they are including visits to Hillsborough Castle over in Ireland as well. These are £1 tickets to go to either the Tower of London, Kensington, Hampton Court, or Hillsborough. The £1 tickets are available for people who receive universal credit, working tax credit, pension credit, child tax credit, employment and support allowance, income support, or job seekers allowance. So if you are in receipt of those things, you can go to these places for £1. Under fives are free all the time. I think I've got a sneeze coming. I think it's going to escape. Pardon me. Sorry about that. So that is a considerable discount on what you would normally pay to go there. So if that does mean you can get tickets for £1. Mariska, it took me a while to say until they fell out of you to figure out what sproglet was. Sorry, I was euphemistically talking about children. Brian says, I think you were Anne of Denmark. I was. I did at one point mince about Hampton Court as Anne of Denmark, but also as Titania, because in the in the story we created that was based upon some things that happened and also some dramatic license, Shakespeare's company had come to Hampton Court. They were going to perform for Anne of Denmark and King James. they were going to perform Midsummer Night's Dream, but half the cast hadn't shown up. So Anne takes it upon herself, because as we know, Anna Denmark did love a mask and also spending lots of lovely money. So she's like, well, I'll step in for the rehearsal. And so she comes out in full fairy wings and flirts about the Great Hall. And I had the most delightful time. It was so hot, but it was great fun. I've played other people that are also super cool at Hampton Court and elsewhere. Not many years back, about 2018, 2019, I got to play both Abigail Masham and Sarah Churchill at Hampton Court. Playing Sarah Churchill was a delight. I've played a fool at Hampton Court, a Tudor fool. It's been great fun. Lots of great fun. Marianne, own them. Really, Dr. Cat, while they are your children, ownership is not cool. LOL. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. I was talking to various people about the difference between training dogs and raising kids, and I'm like, dogs just learn quicker. I am in possession. That's it. I'm in temporary possession of a child. And I use the term possession because occasionally it does feel like you've got a loaded weapon. Like, it's risky business. You've always got to keep an eye on them, particularly when you're out and about, because it's frowned upon to put them on a leash. But they might be biters. They might be biters. Did I get to be itchy as Miss Churchill? Put a B in front of that. Yes, I did. I had a delightful time. My favourite moment, because a lot of the stuff sometimes we did sort of scripted stuff, heavily scripted stuff, and sometimes it was very kind of loose. We did one thing where it was a sort of meet and greet, whereby Abigail Masham comes into she comes in and finds herself confronted by a throne in the king's apartments, and I determined that she did not reverence low enough for looking at the throne. So I said, lower. And the first time I did it, I got such a delightful thrill that I went, we'll take that further next time. And on one occasion, I got the lady who was playing Abigail Masham opposite me to, we hadn't discussed this either, but fortunately she was my friend and she went with it. I got her to fully lay on her belly, arms outstretched, full genuflection. I just kept going, lower, lower. And then when she was like belly down, face turned, I went, that's enough, you may rise. And it was delicious, but also horrendous. I feel like I did Sarah Churchill proud, though. I'll be honest with you. But yeah, so that's good fun. So these things, I think the pound tickets are a great asset. Also, if you work in a school, if you're in charge of trips and things, do check stuff out. Like, they do a thing called Access Fund, whereby there can be bursaries involved for schools, but there's a high pupil premium and things like that. So do see about what the things they can offer. Don't necessarily be put off by the ticket price, because it is high. I recognise that fully, and I think this is a great shout that you can have these £1 tickets. And there's great. I like the sites. Obviously, I work at them, so I am heavily biased. But I also want to point out that as well as working at the sites, which does of course give me a pass that means I can go in for free, I do also pay for a yearly membership, as does my husband's got a membership for him and Gabriel. Dominic's too young to need one at the moment, so we all have memberships to the place that I work, because I go there a lot. And also, if you remember, you can do things like go to the carol services, which are great fun. So I put my money where my mouth is on this one. But yeah. So that is what I have for you today. And it is bang on 2.5 hours. I always say they go for about 2.5 hours. And no matter how many slides they are, they're always about 2.5 hours long. I've just seen Jessie's comment. Have I? I don't think I've ever referred to my children as that. I've kept that out of my mouth. I mean, I do say things like I hatched them, or they came out the sunroof, or they fell out of me. But yes, sproglets. My husband calls one of them Test Run, and the other one the Manager. So, I'm not going to say that other one, Riska. I'm not going to say it. But delightful. Oh, Brian, St. Catherine's Day. Hang on, which St. Catherine? I'm Googling because she was the patron saint of my school. If it's the one. St. Catherine of Alexandria of Catherine Wheel fame. Yes. She was the patron saint of my school. She is the patron saint of female learning. St. Catherine and her Catherine Wheel. We had a stained glass window in my school. And yes, so they'll be doing a celebratory day at my school for St. Catherine. I've forgotten. Oh, we used to do all things for, we'd do, every classroom would have like a charity thing, and they do different activities like a tombola or a cake sale or whatever. Super fun. Make sure you're most grateful. I'm most welcome for that, and I'm pleased that you can use it for your students. I love it. That's brilliant. Off topic, does the Church of England do saints? I mean, broadly speaking, the school I went to was a Church of England school. I mean, not specifically. I don't think. I mean, I'm godless. So I'm utterly godless. But I think not in the same way as Roman Catholics do. I don't think they pray as intercessors. I think the lives of saints are seen as, correct me if I'm wrong, somebody who goes to church. I think the lives of saints are seen as being things you can learn from, and so thus have importance, but not intercessional. Is that a word? Mayhap. Intercessional. Could be. So yes, they do saints, but not in the same way. Equally, the Church of England is basically Catholic, so it's just, no purgatory, no confession. But like Anglicans, high Anglican church, loads of bells and whistles. Right, friends, thank you so much for spending this time with me. There were some rambles down the road. There was some rage. There were some fun. I told some stories of my life. gave me a background biography, which you may not have wanted, but you got it anyway. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Thank you, whether you are watching live or on the playback. Also, let me know because I can see some people are watching through and commenting through the vertical video. If you could put a little comment after we finished, where did this video show up for you that you can watch it on your phone like that? Is it on the short shelf? Because I'm learning all of this new. I hope it worked out for you. I hope it looked good. And I hope it looked fairly good on my screen, so it looked all right. So let me know what that was like. I'm going to keep doing it because why not? I can see both sets of comments. That's spectacular. And yes, have a wonderful rest of your week, whatever you're doing. Wonderful rest of your Monday too. I will speak to you hopefully on Friday during our premiere. I think it's a good one this Friday. I'm excited about it. It's a biography of a lady that we don't talk about very much, and I think she's super fun. So I hope you're going to enjoy that and chat to me about her. She's a good giggle. And enjoy the rest of your December next month, and then we're rolling into Christmas. So if you've got other ideas for videos, maybe something festive that you'd like me to cover, do drop me an email. That would be super useful as well. Oh, Jin says that you're watching through vertical video, didn't like it. Chat was minimal. Oh, the chat doesn't show up quite the same way. That's annoying. Although I have got a button where I can show comments on stage. So I wonder how that would look. I'm just going to, before I go, I'm going to see what happens if I click that over. Oh, there we go. Now then, Jin, what about that if I put the comments up on stage with the live comments? Does that make it better if you can see the chat? Yeah, because I can see the chat. I can see the chat on my screen. I can see it on both screens now. And I can... It's very tiny. I can make it bigger. Tall. Wide. Big font. Oh! What do we think? What do we think? Maybe? We could try that out. I mean, it doesn't bother me. So there are now two options with the vertical video, Mrs. We've got Miss Amethra. Apologies, I found that difficult to say. So I think vertical video is if you on your phone or apparently computer as well. So I can do both. I can highlight the chat as I'm doing here, but I can also have the chat rolling so people can engage with it that way. Yes, now that's going to be an issue. Watching on the PC, the whole screen is portrait, and it's very difficult to see your photos, even read the corresponding numbers, checking the links. Right. Yes. I will keep working on it. But maybe this is a good stopgap in the way, in the journey towards where we want to go. Okay. The photos were too small. Okay, if I know that maybe I can change the way the slideshow operates to work better for both formats. Let me look into that for next month. We'll keep experimenting, friends. And if we don't like it, we'll figure out a different way to do it. I mean, also, if you don't like it on one format, I'm saying hopefully you can pick the other one, but I don't also know that. And I can take the comments off as well. So thank you for that advice and for that chat as well. I will investigate further. But thank you for being along for the experiment. Have a lovely rest of your week. Look forward to chatting to you in the premiere on Friday and in December as well. Again, as I said, let me know about any festive video topics you'd like me to cover. For now, though, have a lovely rest of your day. Do take care of yourselves. And for now, it's going to be bye-bye from me.